In today's show, we discuss, did this world famous religious person ever actually exist?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello my friend, I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you gonna do, eh?
Are you tired? You seem a bit tired.
I'm actually distracted. Yes, you're right. I am distracted today. I met a friend on the bus home, and he said something which has confused me, and I don't know. I was thinking about it, and I couldn't work it out. He said he had asked his girlfriend to get a tattoo of a seashell very high on her thigh.
Right.
And I was like, why? I'm sure you're wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
And then he said, so that when he puts his ear to it, he can smell the sea. And I don't know what that means.
What?
When he puts his ear to it, he can smell the sea. Sorry, everybody I've told laughs like this. What the hell? What's subliminally funny? I don't. Okay, this is what it is. Everybody laughs.
That's terrible. I wonder where you were going with that. Oh dear.
I'm only smiling because you're laughing, man. I still haven't figured it out. But anyway.
Okay, that was actually good for you. Come on, let's keep up our tradition. You still haven't said hello to our audience.
Hello, audience.
Oh God, a big tut there as well. You really are not enjoying that. I like seeing you squirm. But
You do. I know. You're not even kidding, man.
Oh dear. Oh yeah, I just want to mention to our listeners and viewers out there, we're going to a UFO conference in the next few weeks. So we're going to trial it out to see if we can run a show from the venue itself. Obviously, that's depending on whether we're allowed to, of course, but we will make an attempt there. So we'll see how that pans out. We're just giving you a sort of a heads up that show will occur in a few weeks' time. So look out for that one. Anyway, on with today's show. And this is one that you've come up with. And it's an interesting one because you wanted to mention, did this world famous religious person ever actually exist? So do you want to elaborate first as to who this famous person is and maybe to answer this question?
Well, the thing is, it surprised me to learn that there is little actual hard evidence that many historical figures we just take as granted that they did exist. There's little hard evidence to actually prove it. If you went to a court of law that was skeptical and you went by all the rules of evidence, it would probably be thrown out. I'm thinking of people like Socrates, or Socrates, if you want to pronounce it like that. People like Socrates, and then perhaps because he is the personality under discussion today, perhaps someone even as famous as Jesus Christ. Well, Jesus anyway. Before we talk about the Christ, because Jesus Christ is a slightly different kettle of fish.
Jesus of Nazareth.
Jesus of Nazareth. That you would assume. I think growing up, I was brought up as a Catholic. All that. It never crossed my mind that there wasn't a historical Jesus. That there wasn't somebody called a real person called Jesus. Now, whether he really was the Son of God or not, well, that's up for debate. That's Jesus the Christ, Jesus Christ, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Being the Son of God, but Jesus of Nazareth, as you've rightly said, it didn't cross my mind at any time that he might never have existed. And so when I found out that there are other people also that we take as granted these people really existed, and then we find out that, well, perhaps they didn't. And that's a big surprise to me.
Well, how would you, even before the advent of TV, know that somebody existed and be comfortable that they genuinely existed?
And I think because you'd have multiple sources, multiple independent sources discussing the person. That would be one way to do it. And like I said, independent sources. So if person A said this about about him, person B said that, and things about person C, you can marry all the sources together and go, yeah, there really was someone like this. That would be the way to do it.
But you're questioning. Are you questioning the apostles and the different books
The
that were
interesting
put
thing about the
together in the
apostles,
Bible?
the different thing about the book, about the Gospels of the not the apostles, but the Gospels.
Yeah, the Gospels, but they were
The thing about the
deemed to.
Gospels, they were written about 70 years after the death of Jesus. And
Yes.
many of the apostles actually had died before then, so it's like, who wrote them? I mean, we know that the people whose names are attached to these Gospels are not, in fact, are not, in fact, the apostles. So Mark wasn't one of the apostles, neither was Matthew, Luke, or John. These were not apostles of Jesus. So these are people who were repeating the stories that they had heard. And if you repeat a story 70 years after the event, just how accurate is that story going to be? So,
I mean, there is evidence that the different people that wrote the passages of the Bible, they didn't collude with one another. So there were some similarities in what they said about Jesus. So you could err
it's an
on.
urban legend, though, isn't it? It could be like an urban legend. How you have the urban legend. I'll tell you this urban legend is completely. It's nothing to do with the matter under discussion. But I just wanted to find out if you've ever heard anything like this.
Go on.
Have you heard of a cab driver picking up a passenger? A passenger sits in the back of the car. Passenger is very quiet, very silent, not really communicative. Wants to go somewhere peculiar, the edge of town, somewhere close to a cemetery or a graveyard or something like that, or maybe to the mortuary. And then at some point, towards the end of the journey, either the person disappears, or when they get out of the car, they behave in a strange way, and you see something weird, cloven hooves instead of feet and things like this. Have you ever heard of such an urban legend?
I can't say that I have. No.
That's a big disappointment. I was hoping you were going to say yes, and then show that, look, all this. I mean, it's not really happened. It didn't really happen. It's built up a body of being repeated so often that it's now an urban legend.
I understand that. I understand that. But if you're going to use this argument that he didn't exist, although I've got some other people that are non-Christian sources that make reference to Jesus. So that then, in my opinion, would reinforce the fact that he did actually exist. Granted,
When I hear
well,
when I hear the evidence, if they're repeating Christian sources, then just because they're non-Christians themselves, they could be repeating Christian sources, which of course is suspect.
there was a chap who wrote a piece called Testimonium Flavianum, and his name was Flavius Josephus, and he was
Josephus, the famous
Josephus. Is that you say?
backstabbing anti-Jewish Jew.
He was from 37 to 100 AD, and he made mention of Jesus and his crucifixion and his followers. He didn't go
Josephus is
into
one of the
much.
stronger.
Yeah,
He is one of the stronger pieces of evidence that supports the historical
Jesus.
Jesus. Interestingly,
But
yes.
again, now you've got two sources of information. You've got the Bible itself, and then
You
you've
can't use
got.
the Bible to prove the Bible, man.
No, I know, but the story is is by supposedly different people. Otherwise, and you can tell that they've been written differently because they're little books and passages in themselves. So they have been written differently by different people. But yeah, you're right. They could be talking about a made-up person. But then if we were to go back in recent history, before TV and before video, before cameras, before all sorts, how would we even prove that, say, William Shakespeare was actually alive?
That's a really bad example because we're not even sure if there was. We know there was someone called William Shakespeare. We're not even sure that it really was a person called William Shakespeare. Some people say it was Francis. Was it Francis? No, was it? Yeah, Francis Bacon. Was it?
I
The
don't know.
thing, the thing could have been Francis Bacon, who was using the pen name William Shakespeare. Now, I might be wrong about Francis Bacon, but there was someone else, a well-known Englishman around that period of time, who was undeniably alive. I mean, we all know he was alive because Shakespeare, I think, for example, I don't think he ever met Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I. I don't think he ever met her, and I forget who her successor was. I don't think he ever met the successor either. I don't think we know where he's buried. Do we? There are all sorts of questions about him. I mean, he didn't have any offspring that we know of. So you chose a really bad example because
Okay,
he's
but
one person who might not even have existed, really.
but there you go. Therein lies the problem. How would you, famous people, urban legends, what have you? How do you even know that they existed?
Oh, we know Queen Elizabeth. I mentioned Queen Elizabeth I. We know she existed because we know where she's buried.
Well, yeah.
And, many people met her, and all sorts of people met her from all walks of life, and well, walks of life. I'm not sure about that, but all sorts of people met her. So we can say with some certainty, yes, such a person existed. And I'm saying that for Jesus as a historical figure in 2,000 years ago, not cracking on a bit now, isn't it? 2,200 years ago. It's not that simple. It's just, I mean, first of all, I love the way that someone pointed out that the name Jesus was quite common at the time.
Yep.
In fact, the name Jesus is still common in Latin America, isn't it? A lot of people are called Jesus,
Jesus, yes.
Jesus, which is Jesus. So it was quite common. And saying, was there someone called Jesus? Was like saying, is there someone called John Smith? It's or John. Sorry, no Smith. Is there someone called John? Yeah, there would be.
But he
But are
had
we sure
more.
we mean the Jesus, the Nazarene, Jesus from Nazareth? The
I,
Josephus,
I
of whom
do
is
understand. I do understand what you're saying, and obviously there is certain doubt on whether he was genuinely who he was, because, as you rightly say, messages back then were recorded by word of mouth only. Very little was written down. So
yep,
when things were written down by the very few people who could write, they would only write, they were never the ones there first hand. They were always second, third, fourth hand. So things get misconstrued, things get diluted, etc. So there is an element of that. But as a figure, because he was oh, well, for one, okay, if we narrow down some of the chances, going back to Flavius Josephus, however you wanted to pronounce him, he did mention Jesus and his crucifixion. Now, unless there were hundreds of people called Jesus that were crucified, for what particular reason? Why did Flavius Josephus feel the need to recount this particular Jesus and his crucifixion if it wasn't significant? So that would sort of lead to the fact that maybe this Jesus did exist because he made it into somebody who is non-Christian to actually write about him in his manuscript or passage or whatever it was.
I've got quotations that purportedly were written by Josephus, and this one says, And he's talking about Jesus here. So, quote, "For he was one who wrought surprising feats and was a teacher of such people as accept the truth gladly. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks," end quote. So, that little bit there about such people as accept the truth gladly, that's really peculiar for a non-Christian to write. That would be like me writing about some religion I don't believe in and saying the people who believed in their prophet accepted the truth gladly. Why on earth would I say that? I just note that he had a lot of very, very fanatical supporters, and I'll leave it
Followers,
at
yeah.
that. I would someone say that I wouldn't characterize the way that they
So what are you saying then by that little piece? Are you implying that
Josephus
his
is
argument was
unreliable.
flawed,
Yes,
unreliable? Right.
Josephus is
What you mean?
unreliable.
He was probably had Christian leanings. He was
No,
seduced by
no,
the teachings, or
no. He was quoting Christians.
okay,
He had been told about Jesus from Christians. Doesn't mean that that was any kind of evidence in itself. I mean, he, other people. I mean, funny enough, historians take Josephus as a serious source. I don't know why they do that. They probably believe in evolution, not such people. But
what's that got
back,
to do with it? But okay,
well, I characterize it. Separate the world into two people. There's the wise people and the idiots. Now, if you believe in evolution, you're an idiot. So straight, it's just. And if you're a historian and you believe in evolution, you're an idiot. So we can dismiss what
that's
you say
very
about
black and
this.
white.
Yeah, I know I am a very black and white person, but more
Ridiculous.
believable. No, more believable. No, anyway, more believably is Paul. Paul the apostle. Paul, yeah, I'll call him. Is it Paul the apostle? No, Paul of
Of
Paul who had
Sardis,
been Saul of Tarsus.
Sarsis, that's it.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was a persecutor of Christians. He persecuted Christians. And it was when, as you know, this famous story was on the road to Damascus. Some kind of blinding light, and it was lightning or something. Whether it struck him, I can't remember the details now. It's been a long time since I heard the story. And then he heard a voice saying, "Paul, is it Paul, or Saul, why does thou persecute me so?" or something like that. And then he became a convert. Now, he is actually believe it. I mean, I can defend this argument if you want me to, but I think if we look at the rise of Christianity critically, you would actually say that it wasn't Jesus who gave rise to Christianity. It was this Paul of Tarsus, his untiring evangelism and everything, and his writings and so on and so forth. And he basically created Christianity. So
Did he actually had met Jesus
he didn't
and
meet Jesus because
no?
obviously Jesus had died when all this happened. But he met Jesus's brother James, and he met Peter, the apostle, Peter the apostle. So he met at least two people who had met Jesus, and his testimony, therefore, as a former skeptic who converted, and in part of that conversion was in going out and looking for evidence, because the conversion in itself was a seed to spur him to seek out Jesus, if you like, the historical Jesus, and to
But
find
how
out what
did
actually
he? I
happened.
mean, I don't know the story of Paul
Oh, do
of
you not?
why. No, I don't. I don't know the detail of why he then converted. Was it only because of that episode?
That mystical moment. That's
So
why I
he
say
didn't actually listen or hear any teachings from Jesus to realize that Jesus was actually talking
no, no,
about
no, no,
the
no, no,
same
no,
God.
no, no. He did not. He was he was very much a persecutor of Christians. He thought that they were heretics and should be put to the sword. He hated them.
So he was doing that. He was doing that after Jesus' death anyway.
Hmm.
And then he converted after he had that funny episode.
Yes, it's
And
called if you like, I don't know whether it's called a moment of truth, but it's called the road to Damascus. So when you have your road to Damascus is when you have something that radically alters your points of view. I think we should probably look it up for our listeners. I'll do that. And what impresses me about it is that he spoke to at least two people, like I said, James and Peter. James being the brother, Jesus' brother, and Peter being the
Apostle.
Peter the apostle. So that's pretty heavy evidence. And I think to me it's that. And in 1961, excuse me, in 1961, we discovered somewhere in Israel now. I'm not actually sure where. I'm not sure where we discovered. But in 1961, we discovered a fragment of a stone tablet that mentioned Pontius Pilate. So Pontius Pilate being a historical figure that obviously appears in the biblical story of Jesus, because he's the one that condemned
Yes.
Jesus. Did he really? I mean, he did, but he left it to the
Yeah, he left
Sanhedrin,
it to,
didn't he?
yeah, he didn't do it himself. He said, do as you will.
Yes.
Yeah, he didn't.
And there had been some suggestion before we discovered this stone tablet. There had been some suggestion that he wasn't a real character either. But then we did discover this tablet in 1961, and all this is very interestingly presented in a video, which I will share with you, and we'll put it in a link for our listeners in our blurb. And as we always do, nowadays, dear listeners, we provide a lot of links and stuff that we talk about in our blurb. So please have a look and feel free to click through and make sure that we're not talking absolute nonsense. Okay? Well, we might still be talking nonsense, but we might still be talking nonsense, but
Two
we're not.
numpties
We wouldn't be.
always talking
We
nonsense.
wouldn't be the only ones because we've got links. So there we are. So I've sent that to you, and we can share that with you.
Okay.
It's very interesting. He talks about all the presenter talks about many pieces of evidence that support the idea that Jesus was a true historical figure. And by and large, I don't know. I don't know.
Are you still unsure? Because I personally believe that he did exist, and he did say and preach around that time frame. I do believe that. What I'm still unsure about is the miracles that he was supposedly responsible for.
Walking on
Because
water is a hard act. It's a hard act to pull off. I know we have a magician in the
what,
UK.
converting water to wine?
No, walking on water.
Walking on water, yeah.
That's a pretty nifty act if you can pull it off. And apparently he did. Now we have a magician here in the UK. Can you remember his name? Walked across the Thames, or at least a part of the Thames, in front of the Houses of Parliament.
No, I don't remember that.
It was only about 4 or 5 years ago, Tony.
Oh, okay. No, I don't know about that.
I can't remember his name, so that's that's how important it is. Somebody walks on water, and five years later you go, yeah, that guy who walked on water. You see, this is what I'm saying. If Jesus had walked on water, maybe people would be standing there. Yeah, I was fishing in Galilee one day, and this guy was walking. Now, what was his name again? I don't know. Came to a bad end. See what I mean?
Do
Yeah?
you not feel? Do you not feel that it is a little bit not urban legend, as we've already touched on? I don't want to be that disingenuous, but it's like Chinese whispers. Like you say, people will exaggerate some of the things and move it further. And if young people, without able to practice critical thinking, in fact, many people couldn't practice it, would see something, they wouldn't know how to interpret it. So it would almost be magic or godlike. And so they would talk to others about it. Oh, wow, you should have seen what happened. And by very nature, people do exaggerate when they're excited and what have you. So a lot of the stories could have been exaggerated
Hmm. Yes.
for impact purposes, of course. So, yes, in my opinion, I think he existed. Yes, he taught a lot of good things, but did he, actually do miracles? How many of the stories in the Bible, more than one person shows evidence that he created or did the miracles? The only one is the one that Lazarus rose from the dead. There was more than one person seeing.
You see, the funny thing about the Lazarus rose from the dead is that it's one of the most suspect miracles from my point of view, because he does something very, very strange when he raises Lazarus from the dead. Afterwards, do you remember what he told Lazarus when he had raised him from the dead? He
Enlighten me.
said, he said, return home, right? But keep secret what I have done here.
Are you sure those were his words?
Well, I'm not quoting, it's not a direct quote. The quote was, "Keep it to yourself. When you can go home, but keep it to yourself. I've raised you from the dead. Now go home and keep it to yourself." Now, I'll put it to you that if a dead man comes back sauntering into the house, it's going to be really hard to keep to himself. It is, people are going to want to ask questions. We did bury you, man, and here you are. So we've got all sorts of questions, man, because no one's comfortable with this, because I'd be very uncomfortable. I don't like this thing about dead people coming back, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. So that one, it's like, well, why did Jesus say, don't say anyone? And as someone rightly said, it makes sense that it never happened. And people will say, well, we don't remember any Lazarus, the taxman, coming back to life. And someone else will say, yeah, that's because you just told him to keep it quiet. Ah, right, okay. Now, you see.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of people like, when you think about it, nah, it kind of stinks. There's that. There's the other one where he fed the 5,000
With two fish and a loaf of bread.
Yeah, I think after that, a lot of people be like, nobody. If we had heard that he had been taken by the equivalent of if there had been like a mafia in those days, I think a lot of people, if you start handing out and multiplying stuff, the government probably want to tax it, and that would be the first thing. But let's assume that back in those days, no, let's assume that back in those days the tax system wasn't what it would be
No, I don't
today.
think it was quite like that. But yeah, go on.
But can you imagine today? You just start people are going to be
Well,
like, the tax man is going to be, yeah, that's all very well. What's ours? And then you get evil people, wicked people, the mafia people saying, let's grab this guy, lock him in a room somewhere, and just have him
have him making food and fish. Yeah.
super like that. And obviously, being Jesus, the Son of God and everything, he could argue back very strongly, but would have heard a story about how some people thought, yeah, we're going to do this with this guy, and then come a cropper, come to wish they hadn't tried it on. So there are certain things that just altogether, it sounds like this. If there was such a person, and I'll tell you what I think, if there was such a person, he was one of several preachers. Look, they had John the Baptist was a preacher at the same time, right? And then there was Jesus, and then I understand that there were other preachers at the same time. Just as there are today, we have a lot of preachers today. So in America, you have the televangelists and so on and so forth. And then every so often, one breaks through and becomes more famous.
His charisma, his manner, yeah.
Exactly. Somebody breaks through. So I think Jesus was, if he did exist, was a preacher who broke through and got crucified for his troubles and didn't die on the cross.
He didn't die on the cross.
That's what I believe.
What do you believe then? How did he die?
I'm not sure how he died, but I believe that he survived the ordeal on the cross because he wasn't up there for as long as he ought to have been in a normal crucifixion. I believe he left for 48 hours.
Also, the nails don't actually go through the hands. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, they go through the wrists.
They go through the wrists, and also a crucifixion is they're bound
Mm-hmm.
because arms, so to be supported, because there's no way if you put a nail in a wrist
And they
and
just
you'll
tear all
just
the way
slip
through.
out straight
Yeah.
away. You'd just be on the floor. So
Mm.
they bind them so that they suffer.
Mm.
So he would have suffered, he would have bled, but he would have been hung up there.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they were allowed to bring down the body because it was going to be, what do they call it? Sabbath. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Sabbath was going to fall. So they brought down the body and they took the body and they put it in a tomb. Now, the fact is that the amount of time it was up there was not the normal amount of time that would have ensured death. And this big conclusion of mine, which is a big reach, is because of one sentence. This big philosophy of mine is based on one
Oh
sentence,
dear.
and the one sentence is when he was discovered alive, and the women rushed to him because remember they didn't have time to wash him properly and to perfume the body and all that. When they rushed to him, he said the equivalent. Cause I can't speak the old English, King James Bible English. He said something like, "No, no, 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 don't rush me, don't rush me," something like that. Don't come towards me, for I am not yet ascended to the Father. Right? So if you've had your body punctured and you've been flayed and you've had thorns on your head and everything, you're aching from head to foot, right? And overeager fans rush towards you and they want to hold you and grab you. What would you tell them? Oh, hey, I still hurt. I'm not dead yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in King James English, that would be, hey, I'm not yet ascended to the Father.
I haven't died yet.
I haven't died yet. Careful.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you think that is more likely what he said, as
That's what-
opposed to leave me alone, let me die to ascend to the Father.
Correct. And then he appeared to the apostles, but guess what? They didn't recognize him.
No.
Why wouldn't they recognize him?
Because he was ghostly, was he not?
Because he was in disguise.
But wasn't he ghostly?
He wasn't ghostly, he was in disguise. My philosophy is he didn't die, so he can't have been ghostly.
Okay. So he was in disguise. So was he alive?
Because he was alive. And he had to be in disguise. He had to be in disguise because he didn't want the Sanhedrin and the Pontius Pilate to say, "Oh, we didn't finish the job properly.
Let's get him
make
again."
sure let's get him again." That's
So
why
what are
he
you
was
saying?
in
And you're
disguise.
implying that he went away, got out of sight, had a normal life, kids, offspring.
I don't know about all that. That's going too far. But he didn't die. He reappeared to his disciples, and that is what gave them that zeal. Because most of his apostles, most of them died horrible deaths, and they were willing to. Why? Because they had seen Jesus crucified, they had given up all hope, and then they met him again. And to me, that would have given anybody, especially back in those days, they would be like, well, that's God's doing. He's obviously a special one, like we did say. He's
Yeah.
a special one. He's risen from the dead because they wouldn't know about. Well, I don't even know. It's hard to explain how he even did really survive, but he did survive, and they didn't have antibiotics and things, so he healed.
How would he have healed if he'd have lost blood that way? I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, I'm interested in your thesis about this and what you believe is happening. Obviously, there's no way of
Do you remember how the
corroborating any
Roman
of
soldier
this.
checked to see if he was dead when he was on the cross? You remember how the Roman soldier checked to see if he was dead?
No, I don't remember this. It's been such a long time since I was made
I
to
can
read the
tell
Bible.
your Bible
No, I'm
knowledge is
terrible.
horrendous.
It's because I haven't read it for years and years and years and years. Yeah, okay. So if you've refreshed me, please. And
Yes, he
also our
stabbed him.
audience. There may be listeners out there who are not Christians, so don't know the
It
faith.
is
So
true. Well,
please explain. Yes.
okay. By the way, I'm not a Christian either.
No, I'm not a Christian either. That's why I'm not really had a fascination in keeping up with what I was taught all those years ago. Hence why
Yes.
my memory is very flaky of the story.
Yes, Jesus, the Roman soldier, who, by the way, they wanted to go, they too wanted to leave. You know, when you're stuck, you can imagine
Well,
the sun's
Sabbath is
falling,
coming.
Sabbath is coming. They're Romans, they're not going for the Sabbath, they don't care about the Sabbath, but
No,
it's just
but
like the weekend, right? Weekend is coming, and you're standing there over body, and it's like, is this guy dead yet? Ah. So he stabs him in the side, and it does say that water and vinegar came out. Do you remember? It says in the Bible. Do you remember that bit?
I don't remember that bit.
Yeah, water and vinegar came out. And then someone said, and very cleverly said, yeah, but hang on, that meant that there was blood pressure. Because it wouldn't have come spurting out if there wasn't blood pressure. So he wasn't dead.
Okay, but why water and vinegar?
Well,
That's a
that's the
weird
description.
thing to
I'm not sure. I don't think anybody tasted it. So it's something watery came out. It could have been, who knows, some kind of fluid.
Okay.
I read it as fluid. I'm not really reading as anybody sort of put their finger to it and thought, oh, what? I mean, what is water and vinegar? That's just watery vinegar, isn't it? I mean, so whatever.
Well, indeed.
Although they did press vinegar to his lips when he said he was thirsty. Do you remember?
Why would they do that? Because that doesn't
I've
quench your
always found
thirst.
I've always found that peculiar.
Yeah.
I've never
Or did they
fully-
think vinegar was an antiseptic because it was acidic?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure there are clever clogs out there who could answer.
Because that's what vinegar, you'd have thought, if you've got an injury or a wound, you know, you cauterize a wound with a flame, but you can do something similar with acid, which vinegar is. So it would cauterize a wound and it would actually stop infection if that was used.
Infection. Okay, but on the wound, yes?
Yeah, on a wound. Yeah.
Not internally.
No, not internally, but on a wound, an external exposed wound. You put vinegar on it. That's like treating the wound.
For
You're
a second there, I
stopping
thought for 2,000, how many years is it? For 2,100 years,
Why
have we missed,
2,100?
what was it, 2,000? What blooming, what
We're
are
in
we?
2023. Has it 2,100?
Okay, 2,200 then.
2,000 and a bit. Okay.
2,000 a bit. I thought just now, with me, like, hey, have we just discovered on the TNT talk show how to resurrect people who've been mortally wounded? Because everybody else has missed it. Give them some vinegar, man. And then we become the most famous people. Like, how on earth did the whole of humanity miss this obvious thing? Like, you know, press vinegar into their lips and then boom.
Oh dear. Okay. I mean, so what's your actual conclusion then? I mean, I'm mindful I wanted to get another topic which is similar to this one in as well. So what did you think then? Did Jesus actually exist? Jesus of Nazareth, who was he Christ? That's a separate topic. But did he exist, and was he a preacher, etc.? Did he perform miracles even? That's up for debate too.
I think there was a person historically called Jesus, even though I expressed some skepticism before. I'm prepared to find out that there really was a Jesus, and it wouldn't surprise me. That's what I want to say. I'm not sure that we've got proof, but I think we have a preponderance of evidence. So it's not proof, but it's more likely that there was such a person than there wasn't. Was he the Christ? Obviously, I'm not a Christian, so obviously I don't believe so. And did he perform miracles? Yeah, I don't think so.
Indeed, there's a lot of questions there. I'm of the opinion, yes, he did exist. Yes, he did preach the word of God, and he was a good man and was well intentioned. But I believe, like you do, that he may not have been the Son of God. More than likely he wasn't. But the stories have morphed since then. And people have believed those stories, because belief is absence of evidence. It's a belief. Exactly that. You just hear a story, it sounds credible, oh, I'll run with that. That sounds okay. and so you follow it through. So it's a bit like Braveheart. Did you know the film Braveheart? Where after a while, what was his name? What was the actual Scottish?
Bruce, Robert the Bruce, wasn't it?
Was it Robert the Bruce?
Yeah, I think it was.
I mean, after a while, people
Oh, is it?
believe no, it
Was this
wasn't Robert the Bruce.
something Wallace or whatever his name
Yeah,
was?
William Wallace. That was
William
it.
Wallace.
Yeah. I mean, after a while, legend, in quotes, legend had it that he was 12 foot tall and could fight,
Oh wow.
you know, with steel and kill everyone within, 20 feet of him, and things like that. So, this is the problem with legend and myth, and because there was very little written, because people weren't able to write, it was all word of mouth, and that gets exaggerated, gets lost, gets twisted, and unfortunately that's what's happened. Although I do believe Jesus of Nazareth existed, and he did preach, but whether he performed miracles and was the Son of God, I'm still to be convinced of that.
I think we're a bit off about this Robert the Bruce thing. An increasingly disillusioned Bruce shifted his allegiance to Scottish rebel William Wallace. I know we're two numpties. We hardly ever know what we're talking about. So we must apologize if people are sitting there with their eyes rolling, thinking, "Do I commit harakiri now or later?" Please do not. Okay, we have never said that. We've never ever said we know what the hell we're talking about. We've always made it clear we most likely don't. So, if just writing with your corrections, and we promise we will. I'm going to actually introduce a section where we'll go when we get these things. We'll come back in and say, "Yeah, sorry about that, but we made a mistake." We're not going to say we made a mistake. Sorry about that. Thanks for
Highlighting
for
erroneous
highlighting,
comments or something.
No, I'll never agree that we may even make erroneous comments. For shedding more light. Thanks for shedding more light on this situation. So yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not sure which it is, but apparently there are two of them, Robert the Bruce and William Wallace, and they might even have known each other. So I don't know what the heck the story. I didn't watch the movie, so I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, let's move on with the next topic, which is actually
one last thing. Paul of Tarsus. Yes.
Tarsus or Tartarus?
Tarsus, Trsus.
Okay.
Paul of Tarsus. The reason I say he was the main reason that Christianity became a world religion is that he was the one that said the word that Jesus brought wasn't only for Jews, and it was for Jews and Gentiles, and that's when it exploded because it had to go out. It went out amongst all the nations. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, interesting. Right, the next topic we wanted to discuss, again, it was actually linked to the first one, and it's something that you highlighted, and you said, were there any traces of Jesus in Asia? Mm-hmm. Now, do you want to elaborate that? I thought Jesus only was in, what's the area? Jewish area, Palestine, and places like that. Yeah, he didn't go any further afield than that. So why do you feel that there's evidence that he may have gone even into Asia?
It is because, now, here's the thing. It is because of two women, believe it or not, named Dr. Elizabeth Caspari and Gloria Gasquet. Well, I don't know if it's Gasquet or Gask. Gasque. Elizabeth Caspari became the driving force in establishing the Montessori schools in the United States, yes? Mm-hmm. And Gloria Gasquet became president of the International Vegetarian Union. Boo!
Vegetarian.
I'm loving vegetarians. And in what year was this now? In the early 30s or late 20s? No. In the 1930s, these two women decided to travel to Tibet to study Buddhism, and they just went on this trip, study Buddhism, meet the monks, talk about the religion, and find out if there was anything to it. No, but the biggest surprise came when they visited the Hemis, Hemis, the Hemis monastery, and they were sitting there watching somebody paint. We were watching
It's in Tibet.
this is in Tibet,
Tibet, okay.
watching a monk paint.
Paint, yeah.
When the chief librarian said, "You probably would be interested in this," and he brought them 3 parchment books protected between pieces of wood. And he said, "These books," said the monk, and there's a picture of the monk holding the books, by the way. Interesting. Here's a picture of, these books attest to the fact that we were visited by Jesus.
Jesus himself or Jesus' disciples?
Jesus himself. And here's the link to that story so that everybody can...
We'll share that in our blurb. So you're saying that Jesus actually went to Tibet? That's quite a way.
It is
from
a bit
Palestine. That's miles away.
It's a bit of a
Absolutely
trek.
miles away. Why would he do that?
Maybe he wanted to get away from the Roman Empire.
Yeah,
Because the Roman Empire wanted to kill him. If you remember, if he survived the cross, he would have been, look, I don't know if he had to walk all the way to Tibet, but I
Tibet
suppose
is a
once
long
you've been nailed to a cross, you might not want to do that again a second time, let's be honest.
why
So-
didn't he stop off in India?
Well,
I mean, that's
apparently
quite
he
a bit
did.
closer. No.
Well, no, he did. He did stop off in India because in India there's a story of a prophet named Isa. And if you, I don't know if you know this, but in Islam, Jesus is called Isa.
Isa. I had heard it. I didn't know. I couldn't put two and two
Isa.
together.
Isa is
Okay.
the name. And there is a
But he's
spelling
just a
of
prophet in Islam. He's not the Christ.
it depends what you mean by the Christ. If you mean by the Christ you mean the Son of God, then yes, he's not. However, if you mean someone born of a virgin, then yes, he is in Islam as well.
Interesting.
The difference between the two religions is a single word. All that bloodshed boils down to a single word. That single word being begotten. In Christianity, it says in John 3:16, which is probably the only passage I remember, "For God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son," and then something else, right?
Okay.
That word begotten means that God fathered Jesus. And the Muslim Islam says no. Allah did not father anyone. Allah said, and the way they put it is quite poetic. Allah said to Mary's womb, "Be with child," and it was. That's it. That's the quarrel between the two sides. They really shouldn't be quarreling. Well, I suppose the other thing is it's
They have
more
drifted
theological.
since then, though.
Well, it's more theological because you have to believe in Jesus being the Son of God to achieve salvation in Christianity, whereas in Islam you have to believe in the Prophet Muhammad and the other prophets, including Isa, and in God. In fact, you have to believe that God is one. So the other problem is that there's a Trinity.
Trinity in Christianity. Yeah.
That's the other problem, isn't it? So anyway, it says in this link that I sent you, it says that there's that Jesus stopped off some. I'll tell you in a second when I find the word pond.
Pond.
Jesus halted in Kabul, near Kabul, which is in
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. First of all, and there's a pond there called the Isa Pond,
Okay.
which is where Jesus apparently stopped off and rested and washed his hands and feet. And then in India, where did he go in India? On his way, 'cause you have to get to India anyway to pass into Tibet. I suppose, yeah, I think you do.
Yeah.
From
Well, yeah.
Afghanistan.
You've got to go Afghanistan, top of India to Tibet. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you just want to say that's Pakistan, but I still think you have to get into Nepal or something, haven't you? So
Nepal is northern
Just to the north
China,
of India.
isn't it?
no, north of India. It's between Nepal's
Tibet.
between.
No.
It's
Nepal is-
between.
Gosh, it's now showing my geography is poor.
It's
The,
between. It's between India and China. It's in between.
Okay.
I wonder if we're sure about anything in this on this show.
So how did he get there if he did supposedly? I mean, there's no
Volkswagen.
evidence.
Sorry?
There's no evidence because Tibet is landlocked. So, if
Yeah, he
he'd have been on a
walked.
boat, fair enough, because then the boat would travel. He'd just have to sit there as the boat did the, around Ceylon and round up Bay of Bengal, and then he would have gone that distance. But if he had to go from, it just seems,
Yeah,
like a
he didn't
huge
have to
distance.
get there in a week, man. I mean,
No, I understand that.
once he had left, once he said goodbye to his disciples, he was never heard from again. So if it took him, he wouldn't have taken, I'm sure. If it took him 10 years to walk there, it took him 10 years to walk
He
there.
wouldn't have walked. He would have gone by camel or other transport, donkeys
Or
and
he could have
things.
walked. In those days, those people walked. No motorbikes or anything, so he could have taken a camel. Where's the money coming from? So whatever.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what to say because I don't know a lot about this story. I couldn't find anything that would corroborate the fact that he did. I mean, there's stuff.
Corroboration.
Well, there's stuff that seems to indicate that there was Christianity and influence in
Yes,
those
Christianity
states. Yeah, of
entered
course.
China in 635 AD with a Syrian, whose name I forget now. I don't even know I forget where I even watched that, but the Syrian was preached to an emperor, and the emperor allowed the building of a church in the then capital of China. Allowed, I believe, it was 26 monks or something like that. 26 priests. It said it sounds like a good religion.
Because there's a Malankara church in India from the Syriac Christian community, but that was in the 1st century, so not long after Jesus died or allegedly died. So that was in India. But so could he have been that influence, or I don't know, because I don't think there is, because there would have been, unless he went under a different name and he left it to other people to preach as opposed to himself, which maybe he could have done. I don't know, but it just seems.
I'd imagine once bitten, twice shy. If you got away with it once, I think you just put your head down and just.
Well, no, but if you're preaching God's word, you believe it, don't you? So it is what it is.
I say this only slightly as a joke because I don't really mean it as a joke. But I try to tell Christians that honestly, if Jesus came back today, if he died on the cross and Jesus came back today, he would condemn Christianity. That's the funny thing about it, because Jesus was a Jew, he wasn't a Christian. Paul was a Christian. Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus never said, "I am the Son of God." There's nowhere in the entire
No,
Bible.
he didn't say it, did he? Who
He never
said that he was? Because he never
the
said it himself.
I believe it was something that they came to in due course, that his believers decided in due course. And
But didn't he say something that we're all sons and daughters of God?
we're all sons of God. He didn't make himself mark himself as being special
No.
in that sense. In fact, his message was we should all treat each other well because we are all the sons of God. But I don't know if he meant everybody. I'm pretty sure he meant the Jews. Remember when a woman came to him and said, "Please help I can't remember what she said. Was it my son or my child?" Remember when he said, "It is not good for how did he put it now? It is not all right to give what is meant for children to give it to the dogs or something." It's like, well, like, who are the dogs? Do you remember that in the Bible? Do you remember that passage?
I don't recall that.
It is not meat. It is not meat. It is not meat. Not MEAT. It is not meat to give. If I just say that and just say Jesus, hopefully we'll get a hit.
You're looking it up now, are you? The exact quote.
I'll have to add it to the once I found it, I'll
Add it to our blurb. Yeah.
add it to a blurb. Might have been a Samaritan woman. Anyway, I'm not really sure. So he didn't think much of non-Jews. It was Paul of Tarsus, as I said, who took the teachings outside of the Jewish people and made it into an international.
So why did Paul of Tarsus do this when he didn't actually meet Jesus? Why did he then say what he did? Because he didn't obviously know Jesus' teachings at all. He didn't know what Jesus was talking about. So why did he then promote Jesus, even though he'd spoken to his brother and one of the apostles? Or was it the apostles who were telling him, oh, this story that you've had, this encounter, is the same God that Jesus is talking about? And hence, that's why he promoted it. I mean, there's so many unanswered questions here. We don't know. We're just speculating.
Yeah, we are just speculating. I like to speculate that the world it's got a hidden reality to it, and it was a good idea for the simulation to have a worldwide religion, and that's why he did it.
You never used to be I've changed your tune. Because
I
you
know
never
what.
used to think in a virtual reality. You never did.
I always did because I believe in reincarnation.
No, but that's got nothing to do with being a virtual reality where we're in this.
Well, reincarnation is a what then? If reincarnation is true, what is this then? How would you characterize it? I call it a virtual because it's not true. We are really from the other side. We're not really from here. This is all fake. That's why I don't know how it could. How can I believe in reincarnation and yet think that this world is real?
Because you come back to this world.
Well, you go back into a game when you want to play it, but you're not in. You're not of the game. You're not really in the game. We're avatars that believe that we fake our way into believing that this is where we are. But once you understand reincarnation, you can't think that way any longer. It doesn't make sense. It's obviously a game. It's a virtual world. But I argue with you when you say it's a simulation. That's our argument. It's not a simulation. It's a virtual.
Well, what do you interpret a simulation to be compared to a virtual reality?
A simulation is where entity where objects
Preordained.
is all preordained. Yeah, they're just carrying out their assigned tasks, if you like. But in a virtual reality, just like when you put on a virtual goggles, what you do after that, that's your free will. That's up to you. But in a simulation, it's all set. It's all programmed, and it's nothing real is happening.
So going back to Jesus' story, is Jesus telling a story? In fact, all religions really, are they telling a story of someone who created this virtual world?
Not all religions, because the Buddha never spoke about creation. But the Abrahamic religions, the ones based on Judaism, yes.
Judaism, Islam, and Christianity.
Yes, they do. They do talk about who created the world.
Okay. All right. I mean, you haven't shed a lot of evidence regarding Jesus in Asia.
There isn't. I mean, there's that one book, and there is some talk, but about. It's more apocryphal than anything else. There's some talk about Jesus. If you recall, you say you don't.
No.
If you recall, Jesus disappeared for a while between about the age of about, what was it, 7 or 8? It disappeared from history until about 30. And some people are saying that within that period of time, he went because remember Herod was trying to kill him, King Herod.
He was trying to kill the kids. Yeah, that's right. When they were
Well,
born.
so yes, and so the parents, according to this version, parents took Jesus and they went off towards China. Whether they got all the way to China or not, we don't know. But they went away from Palestine, only returned when Jesus was
Was
quite
a
old.
grown man.
Yeah, but that means the other brothers and sisters weren't born in
No, that doesn't.
Palestine,
That doesn't.
and it doesn't ring.
No, that doesn't add up. It
That
doesn't.
doesn't add up. So
See,
I think
if he was to go, your first argument made more sense, where he didn't die, but had to then leave, and then took some key people with him and spread the teachings there, but not
he didn't take
directly
anybody with him.
himself.
He didn't take anyone with him. I think one of the Gospels says they can't come with him where he's going. It actually says so. You can't come with me where I'm going. There would have been spies everywhere, and if they had been caught again, if they had all stayed together, the likelihood of being caught would have been quite high. So they had to split up, and he had to, divorce himself from
Go
them,
on his own.
go on his own.
So where he'd gone not to go to heaven that he couldn't take, because he could take somebody if they chose to, but he was going somewhere that others could not go. So yeah, that's an interesting angle on it.
Yeah,
And kept his head down, so he didn't actually explain Christianity where he went. He kept his head down for
just
that
kept his head
fear.
down. Yep. Well, he wasn't a Christian. He would have had to be explaining Judaism. But why would he be preaching Judaism to people who aren't Jews? So he wouldn't have preached anyway.
Interesting. I'm mindful we've got to the top of the hour now, so do you want to have a sum up then regarding this second bit? Are there traces of Jesus' story in Asia?
There are traces, but those traces are not reliable.
Yeah, I'm of that opinion too. It's very, very flaky.
Very
It's
flaky. We don't know where that book came from. It's
Yeah,
it's a single source, and we have no idea where it came from.
Yeah, we don't
It hasn't
know.
been tested. How old is the book? I mean, if we do a what's it called, a carbon dating on the book, and then we find out it was written in the first century AD,
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
then
No.
you've got something we can talk about.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
no. I'm of the same opinion. That seems a bit far-fetched for me.
what do you think of the Turin Shroud, by the way? You think it's going to
That's a fake.
Yeah, I think it's a fake.
Yes.
It's risen up again for some funny reason. It's back in the news.
It's a
And they're
fake.
trying to say, oh, there was a burnt piece of carbon that gave the wrong date. I mean, the character, the face there is the face of a Caucasian.
And
I
he
keep
wasn't
saying it. That's a Caucasian. And he wasn't
Yeah.
Caucasian.
No,
This is the
he
story.
Well,
Anyway,
if he
there you go.
was from there, no, he wasn't white. I think they're trying to make it white for a white audience. So yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.
Right.